Good afternoon. I see some of our attendees are joining in. Thank you all for coming and joining us today. I'm going to give about one more minute for people to get logged in, and then we're going to kick off our conversation. All right, I'm going to go ahead and kick things off and get us started. My name is Katie Leffel, and I am the director of the Oklahoma School Foundations Network, and I'm currently helping oversee the Born Mentoring Initiative with the Oklahoma Foundation for Excellence. Both of those programs are dedicated to helping to support public ed across the state of Oklahoma. The School Foundations Network by helping support school foundations in their work, and the Born Mentoring Initiative by helping to spread the news about the importance of mentoring across the state of Oklahoma. And so we're kind of doing a little bit of a crossover webinar today to talk about both programs. I want to do just a quick commercial for our services so that you know some of the ways that I could help your organization, whether you're a mentoring organization or whether you are a school foundation. So for school foundations, the Oklahoma School Foundations Network provides on-call consulting, which means you can give me a call anytime you have a question, need a resource, or could use assistance, and I can help you find answers, find sample documents, whatever it might be that you could use support with. We offer free strategic planning and board retreats for school foundations across the state of Oklahoma. We can design those to meet whatever needs you might have. Obviously, we provide webinars. We're doing one today. And other training opportunities as well. Every year, we give an outstanding program award to school foundations who are doing great work to raise awareness for the cool programs that are happening across the state, and that comes with a $1,000 prize. Our nomination process generally opens the 1st of August, and the awards are announced in October. We also have a monthly newsletter that you can sign up for if you want to go to our website. Other networking opportunities, and then also half-price membership to, it's listed here as National School Foundation Association, but it's recently reorganized as the National Association of Education Foundations. And then for my mentoring hat, our Born Mentoring Initiative has sort of reorganized this year, and we are trying a new program, and that is that we are giving out mentoring grants to organizations that both are trying to get started and those that have been in existence for a while to provide them with opportunities. So I'll talk a little bit more about that at the very end of our webinar. But January is National Mentoring Month. And so this just seemed like a great opportunity to get together with our two guests today to talk a little bit about mentoring, the importance of mentoring, and how you could maybe get mentoring started in your community. Mentor is the national organization for mentoring. They provide an incredible library of online resources, startup guides, best practice guidelines. They have a whole training module that you can take if you're trying to learn more about mentoring and about best practices for mentoring. And I'll send these slides to all of our attendees after the presentation today. So these have links. If you want to go check out any of these resources afterwards, you can do that. So why are we worried about mentoring? Why is this so important that it's risen to the level of us wanting to discuss it for school foundations and for the Oklahoma Foundation for Excellence to adopt this as a strategic program area? We know from the research that mentoring makes an absolute difference in young people's lives. And I just wanted to share a couple of statistics with you that mentoring had as part of their press kit for National Mentoring Month, because I thought that these were really striking. With a mentor, young people are 52% less likely to skip a day of school. They are 78% more likely to volunteer regularly in their communities. And then this one was incredible. They are 130% more likely to hold a leadership position in a club or a sports team. 1 in 3 young people in America are growing up without a mentor outside their family. And by growing that mentoring movement, by being intentional about having mentoring relationships in our school districts with our kids, we're helping to close that gap, increase young people's access to caring adults, and just generally make their lives better. So I'm excited to get to talk today with two different guests, and I'll introduce you to each of them and tell you a little bit about their programs, and then we're going to listen to them talk instead of me. First, I want to introduce you to Dana Gibson. Dana is with the El Reno Public School Foundation and with the mentoring organization Students Striving for Success. And they are a long-running, very successful program that's been going on for a number of years in El Reno. And I'm really excited to hear from her sort of how they got started, that just the story of their mentoring organization and the successes that they've had. And then Rhonda Clemmer is joining us as well, and she is affiliated with the BEST mentoring program, Building Extraordinary Success Today. And they are sort of organized under the umbrella of the Cash Schools Education Foundation. So both of these organizations sort of have a partnership going between mentoring and school foundations that I wanted to let them tell us a little bit more about. I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share for right now so that we can kind of see each other a little bit bigger. And Dana, I'd love to start with you with El Reno. If you could just kind of get us started and tell us a little bit about your story. How did your organization get started? What prompted you all to get involved with mentoring? Just give us some background.
Thank you, Katie, and thanks for including us. We love to tell our story, and we love for people to call and ask questions and want to emulate what we've done that's been successful. We've, of course, every year we change a few things and tweak a few things. We started in 2013. A group of my close friends and I were in discussion about what can we do? How can we help? Should we go to the schools? Should we meet with someone? And we just tossed around these thoughts for about 6 months. And then our 2012 state school scores were released, made public. And Suzanne Thompson, who is a good friend of mine, who's also on the OFE board and has been for several years, called and said, have you read the paper? We have to do something. And she and I sat down and decided to be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. We could talk about things for years to come, but until we wanted to jump out there and do something. And she mentioned, which I was not familiar with at all, the Boren Mentoring Initiative and Beverly Woodrum. Beverly came over and met with a large group of people that Suzanne and I invited, key leaders of the community, attorneys, administrators, insurance people that also were invested in the public schools in El Reno. And what we found was everybody wanted to do something to help our children. And we met a few times. We talked with the Fairview Mentoring Program. Beverly directed us into the best practices that you've mentioned. And we decided to form a committee and call ourselves Students Striving for Success. And if you noticed, our logo is community, family, and students, because we feel like without the family involvement and the community involvement with our children, there's no mentoring. And we firmly believe that mentoring does make a difference. So we brainstormed for a while and then discovered that Brooke Robertson, who is the community development director of El Reno Public Schools, is also a mentoring specialist. And so she came on board. We didn't know she had done that in the past. She came on board, and we had a new superintendent who was who thought our ideas were wonderful. This was in the summer of 2013. He wanted us to start mentoring in September, and we thought, oh, okay. So we wrote our ideas down and decided we needed funds, and how were we going to raise funds, because we weren't a nonprofit. And I've been on the El Reno Public School Foundation board for many years. And I knew they would catch our vision because to me, it was a perfect fit. It fits with the vision that any public school foundation or school foundation would have. So we met with them and asked them to accept our committee into their bylaws, and we would follow all the rules that we needed to follow. And they voted unanimously to accept our committee, and we became a part of the El Reno Public School Foundation, and therefore part of their 501c3. And we're a budgeted item every year in their budget, which is very encouraging for us. We had a mentor drive, and we relied on staff and teachers to determine who would be recommended for the program. Mr. McVeigh, our superintendent, wanted us to stick with reading because our reading scores were so low. And as I mentioned to you, Katie, earlier, we have a very high percentage of English as second language. And it was impossible for these kids that spoke nothing but Spanish at home to be expected to take a test in reading and do well on it when they hadn't been immersed into the English language. So we started mentoring pre-K. And believe me, those kids' brains absorb those English words just like a sponge. And they love it. They love to go home and teach their parents, the words they've learned. And so it's kind of a twofold purpose there. But anyway, we had our mentors all did background checks. We wrote some programs, getting to know one another, and you and me, and we assigned our mentees to our individual mentors. Some had one, some had four. And we went to the schools once a week for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, just depending on the individual student. And we do a lot of talking. We get to know these kids. And I remember I had 4 6th grade girls 2 years ago, and they thought I brought the best chocolate chip cookies ever. And we ate chocolate chip cookies and played games, word games. I never had the heart to tell them that they were those slice and bake cookies that I just stuck in the oven. But, we laughed and we played games, and they told me their secrets, and I shared secrets with them, and we developed a relationship. Now they're freshmen in high school that we still keep up with. But we did that until COVID struck, and we were not allowed into the schools because of virtual learning, and El Reno was completely virtual. Our superintendent and administration did not want us to do Zoom meetings because they had a few incidences that it wasn't a positive thing for them to do. So the committee got together, and we decided that if we couldn't visit with them, we would call. We would send them letters. We encouraged them to write us back. We sent them books and stayed in contact with them every other week that first year. We expected to start mentoring again in January of this year. And of course, as we all know, numbers crept up again, and we were not allowed to continue back in the school. We did vote that the new announcement last week is that we had some teachers and coaches and janitors and administrative assistants and superintendents that mentored. Well, they're allowed in the schools. So they're going to have pizza parties and continue with the tradition of keeping our kids together. And fingers crossed, next September, we'll be back in the school and we'll be mentoring on the regular basis that in person that we've been doing. But I think maybe to close, I want to just suggest that before somebody decides to start a mentoring program, it isn't rocket science. And I remember what Fairview told us with their mentoring program. don't reinvent the wheel. We've already discovered what works, and ask people questions, ask OFE questions, ask the Boren Initiative questions, ask Rhonda questions, people that have already been immersed in this program, ask them questions. Involve yourself with the administration of the schools. Involve yourselves with teachers and make your plea to them that you're serious about making a difference. Connect with civic groups and churches, because that's where we gained the majority of our retired teachers, retired bankers. They wanted to mentor. So we took a lot of people from those groups. And then to never forget to seek the support and financially and just support of your local school foundation. They have a wealth of knowledge, and most of them already have their tax exempt status, and they would love to adopt a mentoring program just like ours did.
That's awesome. Dana, thank you so much for that overview. That was just great to hear, kind of start to finish. And I've got several follow-up questions, and I'm sure I will for Rhonda too, but I'm going to go ahead and toss it to Rhonda. And Rhonda, if you'll do the same thing, just kind of tell us a little bit about best mentoring and tell us your story. And then we can kind of talk a little bit about some of the specifics that school foundation folks and people just interested in getting started with mentoring might want to know.
Okay, I'll start with just some broad overview, but thank you for having me. I'm always excited to talk about mentoring. If I have one person that'll listen to me and let me tell what a difference it makes in a kid's life, then I'm more than willing to do that. We're a little bit newer of an organization, but I will say that, yeah, I called Dana before I started and talked to the El Reno mentoring program. But we started in 18, and I came from business and industry. I'm not from education, and when I was changing careers and wanting to do something else, I said, mentoring has been so important in our business environment, and I know it can do the same thing for kids. So that was kind of my impetus to start in the mentoring field. But we started in 18, and I actually spent an entire year visiting different mentoring programs, talking to people, doing the research. And one of the things that I did was that I substitute taught in every single grade within our school system, so that I could understand kind of what the needs of the kids are and those kind of things. So in 18, we kind of put it together and started recruiting our mentors during the summer of 18. Now we're a little bit different because we're in a very rural environment, and that was part of our vision for our program, is to be able to reach children and talk to them about career exploration. So that's the number one goal of our program, is career exploration and life skills. So our kids in a rural environment, they aren't exposed to a lot of different career choices because they're in a farming community, or around us, a lot of casinos. That's something that is big in our county. But our goal was to put together a program that could then be expanded to other rural communities within Southwest Oklahoma. So we would have an administrative framework that could be used at a lot of different schools. We haven't expanded because of COVID, but that's still our goal, is to be able to use the same as the same administration, and then branch it out into other rural areas. So our goal was to start with 20 kids our first year, and we met that goal. Our kids, we match positive role models with 5th and 6th graders or 7th and 8th grade kids. So they have a one-on-one relationship, and just like the El Reno chapter, they go into the school for 30 minutes to an hour once a week. We also offer leadership opportunities for our kids in the program. So we have lunch and learns once a month, where we bring all the kids together, and we have a speaker come in and talk about a life skill or a career or that kind of thing. And then we also have beginning of year parties, end of year parties, Christmas events where we all get together. And I was really amazed how much our kids like that. frankly, probably more than even the one-on-one mentoring, because they don't get to be, our group of kids don't get to be a part of something, because in general, they're not active in sports or clubs or those kind of things. So for them to be a part of best mentoring and get to go to these activities, that's been very well received by all of our mentees. Um, so when we started the program, I'll backtrack a little bit. When we started the program, we did a lot of championing of it before we even got started. So I went to all the civic organizations, all the churches, those kind of things, because I knew that's where our mentors would come from. Also then went to the Cash Schools Education Foundation, because we needed a 501c3 organization. And they said, okay, yeah, we'll support them. Then I went to the public school, the administration, to the district, and said, I have an MOU I want you to sign, saying that we can partner with you on this. And they have been nothing but supportive. I will tell you that the support of the teacher, and most importantly, the support of those secretaries that are in each one of those schools, it's just imperative that you get that. So it amounts to a lot of cookies going to the school from Best Mentoring. So we started Best Mentoring, which is building extraordinary success today. And we continue to put kids in the program. They're referred by, and we're community based. We're not school based. So they're referred by pastors, youth ministers. They're referred by parents. I have a ton of parents call me and say, hey, how does my kid get in that program? And then the counselors at the school obviously refer a ton of kids to us. So we have way more kids than we have mentors. We could service 150 kids every year. But we go out and we recruit the mentors. They go through a 4-hour training, which is pretty extensive, before they become a mentor. And then they of course have a background check. We have very strict rules about contact outside of school. So they can't ride in the car with them. They can't text them. They can't call them. We don't have really access to the family members as much. It's really a one-on-one relationship with the kids, although we do meet their parents from time to time at group events. So we've been going for on and off without the COVID for 3 years. We had to stop for a year. We tried to do some virtual mentoring, which because we can't call the kids or email or those kind of things, it was very difficult to stay in touch during the time we were off because of COVID. But we are back in the schools now, and we have mentors that range in age from 21 to 81. And we don't provide a lot of curriculum for that one-on-one meeting. I provide through their training a ton of different resources that they can use and ideas for those meetings. But a lot of the mentors, they come up with their own content, as long as it's focusing on career exploration and life skills is what we tell them. So we have seen about 50 kids in our program since it started in 2 years. Some of the statistics I think that are important is that we've had kids that started in the middle school and now they're juniors in high school. So with the exception of relocation and those kind of things, we have only had 2 kids that asked to get out of the mentoring program. So they've stayed in it the entire time. Our mentors generally stay, 2 or 3 years. They've been in there that entire time, unless, of course, they change jobs or whatever. So I think that that's a positive thing for our mentoring program is the retention of both the mentees and the mentors for longer term. But I guess just to summarize some of the things that we found that were beneficial for our program starting up is just the pre-planning and the getting everything in place before we start, so that it's a good experience for both the kids and the mentors. And then also finding those champions within the community and within the school system that will support us. As far as our relationship with the Cash Schools Education Foundation, they do not support us financially. I have a advisory board that was put together before we started that advises me as the program coordinator. And we report back to the Cash Schools Education Foundation what we're doing, but they're really just an umbrella over us. We've just started discussions of what does the Cash Schools Education Foundation look like going forward, because COVID has not been good to them as well. So what does it look like, and can we partner more to provide some paid staff? Because we don't have paid staff in either the Cash Schools Education Foundation or Best Mentoring, and I worry a lot about the continuity of Best Mentoring if we don't have some sort of paid staff. So that's kind of where we're going forward, is how can we partner more and share the resources more.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. So a couple things that I just want to highlight for sort of school foundation related. You both kind of mentioned just the critical piece that having that ready to go 501c3 is, that allowed your mentoring organizations to hit the ground running. Because it can take a long time to get a 501c3 designation separately, and to set all of that up and have to have a complete corporate structure put together to support your organization. And so I love just throwing that out as an idea. Rhonda, you brought up the issues of capacity, right? And school foundations are often struggling with their capacity. And a lot of times school foundations look at something like mentoring and get worried about executing it because it does take a lot of capacity. I think this is a really cool way to highlight the fact that there is a role that school foundations can play in supporting mentoring if you already have a group that's ready to expend the volunteer time and effort to really run the program. That the school foundation role can be sort of within its capacity levels, just acting as an overseeing body, helping run tax deductible donations for your organization. So I just wanted to highlight that.
And Katie, I'll just add too that one of the biggest benefits of the foundation, of the school foundation helping mentoring, is it gave us immediate credibility when I started going out into the community and saying, hey, will you give us some money and make a donation? I'm a part of the Cash Schools Education Foundation. I'm not just a lady that's wanting to go talk to kids about their careers, but we are a validated organization thanks to the Cash Schools Education Foundation.
Oh, I love that point. And that is a critical piece, isn't it? That, you're dealing with a known quantity in the community. And that does give you that instant credibility. I love that. If you were giving advice to people that are looking to start a program, sort of outside of the challenges that we're all facing due to COVID right now, what would be sort of your top one or two pieces of advice that you would give, someone who's looking to get mentoring going in their community? And either one, whoever wants to go first. I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot with that, but just lessons learned,
I don't think we learned any bad lessons. We tried to hire a part-time person when we first started as a kind of administrative to keep track. We can't know like she said, we can't know the phone numbers and the personal information of the students, even what the teacher can't share with us, but they can share it with the other staff members. So we tried to hire someone that could take care of all that, and we failed miserably. That wasn't our goal, was to pay somebody to do book work. And so we sat down with administration and said, do you have someone that you could let run this part of the program? It's not a full-time job. It's a part-time secretarial job. And we could contribute to the El Reno Public School kind of as program sharing, but we don't want to know about insurance or deductions or any of that stuff, or vacation time, or how many hours they actually worked. And so we learned the hard way. We were not in the hiring business, and we turned that back over to their HR department, and it's worked beautifully
I love that
since
as
that.
advice and as an example, Dana. Thank you for sharing that, because I think that's something school foundations can consider in a lot of different areas. I know of a couple of school foundations that recently are trying to up their capacity by working with someone, and have found ways, if they can't completely partner with the district, to sort of, like you said, job share, have found, like, recently retired school personnel that were
Mhm.
willing to work on a contract basis, finding sort of those creative ways so that you don't become an employer
Right.
through the IRS. So thank you for bringing that up, because that's definitely an issue that I think both foundations and mentoring organizations are going to really want to think through before they go down that road of sort of hiring staff. But that there are creative ways that you can get that
Mhm.
support without having to become an employer. So thank you. Rhonda, what about you? Do you have any sort of lessons learned, like big pieces of advice that you would pass on?
Well, I think I said, before, preparation is really important. So, having all those marketing materials prepared and everything before you even start to launch the program, to have your policy and procedure manual, to do all that championing up front. I just think that that's very important. One of the I think lessons that I learned is, when we started out, it was very easy for me to find mentors, because I had a sphere of influence, and I had people that I came in contact with, all of my friends and relatives that thought mentoring was a great idea because Rhonda was doing it. That was good. But that those mentors run out very quickly. So, you tap into all your friends, but you darn sure need to have a broader market for your mentors, which I'm finding as we're in 2 and 3 years of the program, because those mentors, they can't mentor anymore, or for whatever reason, and you need a constant flow of new mentors in. So you have to really be thinking about where you're going to get those. And some of the places that you think would be really good, like churches, that volunteer a lot, they haven't been, as successful with getting mentors, because they all have their programs, and I think that we're in a place where everybody has their things that they're working on, and to ask people to come in and mentor, once a week. For us too, it's a challenge because we're rural. So all of those folks that work, they can't drive 45 minutes to the school to mentor and then go back to work. So in our case, it has to be pretty much somebody that either works locally or does not work during the daytime period, because our mentoring happens from 7 in the morning till 3:30 or 4. So that's a lesson in just be prepared that you really need that pipeline of mentors working all the time.
Yeah. And it's just going to be a never ending process of recruiting.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. And therefore, a never ending process of training new people in your best practices, of getting those critical background checks done. Do you all do background checks through your own organization? Do you partner with your school district to run those checks? How have you handled that aspect of sort of watching over that safety?
We do ours through the school, the same as substitute teachers would go through.
Yeah.
We have a third party that we just pay for, $39 a person or whatever.
Yeah. No, that's just good to hear. I always like to ask those questions. That is one of the most critical pieces, again, and making sure that you are doing things that are in line with best practice.
And best practice is really to do that at least every 2 years, to redo that. And I'll just have to raise my hand and admit, we're not real good at, once we have a background check, going back in and redoing them every single year, just because of the cost.
Right.
Mhm.
Something that I think would be interesting to find out, and this may be a little bit more of an urban versus rural thing. My kids have through the years been in Oklahoma City public schools, And as a part of that, every year I had to do a background check as a parent volunteer to be able to go into the building. And I know that may not be as in-depth as like the substitute teacher version. I wonder if your school districts have a process that they're using to vet, if maybe, that would be a way as an organization that you run the first round of sort of the really in-depth background check, but that you're asking them to roll through your district's procedures annually so that you're catching if there were big red flags that those would pop up. I don't know if that would be something that your districts are doing and would be willing to have you sort of piggyback with or not.
Our district does that, but we just typically, either the mentor says I'll pay for it. Ours is $17, so it's not expensive.
Yeah.
Or I'm not sure if they would piggyback with us to pay for ours. Probably if we sat right now, if our mentors sat through the substitute training, they would probably pay for anything.
That's right.
We're desperate for substitute teachers right now.
Yeah, it's a critical time in education, and we've kind of avoided addressing a little bit the elephant in the room with COVID and just all the challenges surrounding that. But for every reason it challenges us on the organizational side, it also is becoming more and more critical by the day as a need for kids to have that support. And I think any of us that are sort of paying attention to the news coming out of what we're learning about kids learning loss, kids mental emotional health right now, we need mentors more than ever working with our kids in the schools. And so I hope that maybe some of that mass messaging will be beneficial to you all as you go back to recruiting more mentors in the future, that it's going to hopefully call more caring adults, to the forefront.
Well, and much like Rhonda said, and I mentioned to you earlier, so many of our mentees don't, when they get called to the office, it's because they're in trouble.
Yeah.
They've had unexplained absences, or they're in classroom trouble, or something negative. So when they get the call to go to the mentoring room at their individual schools, and they come back with a paperback book, which we don't give presents, but we do, pencils and cookies, like I said. Some of the other kids want to know how they can become a mentee. So it's good for the kids to kind of feel like they're doing something positive. And we had one little boy that would not hold his head up and acknowledge anyone he met in the hallway. And after 3 years of mentoring, he's in high school now, but he would look up and acknowledge you when you walk down the hall. And it was just such a turnaround, because he wasn't always in trouble. That's not why he was being called out of the class. So there's just so many stories, and I'm sure Rhonda could share a plethora. She and I, maybe you don't want to get us started on any of this, because obviously we're proud of our groups and we're proud of our children, and we like to talk about it.
Well, and I think those are the stories really, though, that call to volunteers, right? I mean, I was a mentor in my kids' elementary school for years. It's actually was part of the tutor taught program. Corporate Sonic had adopted our elementary school, but parents were allowed to come and be tutor mentors through that program too. And the kids that I worked with over the years, I had one little girl that I was able to work with for 2 consecutive years, and watching her growth during that time. And I'm certainly not saying that it's related to me or anything special that I was doing, but just having that additional support, it really can turn things around for a kid. Their attitude, their love of learning, their openness to feeling positive about school. And so I'll be right there with you to tell all the stories and get everyone real excited about why mentoring is so important. I just want to sort of start wrapping us up, because like we said, we could talk all day, and to encourage anyone who's watching this who has specific questions for either of you, I'm going to post my card that has all my contact information. If you all want to reach out to me, I can get you in touch with Rhonda or with Dana certainly their contact information, I think, is also listed on their websites, which I'm going to link to that presentation. And so I know that you all are open to supporting other folks across the state of Oklahoma who might want to get started with mentoring. And I appreciate your leadership in that and your willingness to be open and learn from one another. But I also want to, I'm going to share my screen again for just a minute, because I also want to highlight sort of something exciting that's a new direction for the Board Mentoring Initiative. And that is that in November, we launched our first round of grants for mentoring organizations. We sort of went through a strategic look at our programming and what we were doing and how we were impacting mentoring across the state, and thought that we would like to try something different. And that something different would be putting dollars into the communities, into mentoring groups that are in existence and that are working right now to make things better for our kids across Oklahoma. And so we launched our application portal November 1 for this year for mentoring grants, and had filled all 8 available slots within 2 weeks, which is really exciting. And so we have grants available in 2 different areas. We have startup grants available to new mentoring organizations, and we kind of classify that as organizations that have been operating for 3 years or less. And we've been a little generous in our interpretation of that because of COVID. Because we know that there are organizations that maybe got started and had to push pause for a year, and that those grants are available for $3,000 for organizations to use to get ramped up and to get their organization moving in the right direction. And then we also offered opportunity grants to existing mentoring organizations. Those were for $1,500. Just to allow those organizations to get the things that they need, to pay for some more background checks, to purchase supplies, whatever it is that supports the vision of your mentoring organization. Because as you all know, you just described sort of the things that are similar about your organizations, but the focuses that are also different. And so we want to recognize that there are a lot of really great ways to do mentoring right. There's not just one way to do mentoring right. There's certainly critical pieces that you need to have in place to have your mentoring organization be successful and safe. But what focus you choose to use is really up to your community and what you see as the needs of your community. And so those opportunity grants are designed to help you meet your unique organization's needs. And so we just announced this month our winning organizations of our first round of grant funding. And that's all information is all available on our website if you want to go check it out. And then we are hoping that as we go into fall next year, we will have a round 2 of funding available for the next coming fiscal year. And so we'll be just sort of looking at how this went for the first time for our first round of grants and figuring out what changes, if any, we might make to the process going forward. But I just want to make everyone aware that these grants are now a thing and available. And so if you're watching this webinar and you already have a mentoring organization and you could use some funding, or if you're looking to get started and that these startup funds might be something that would be really helpful in getting you that first round of background checks and some of those important pieces to get up and running, we'll just encourage you to check back as we get closer to August on that next round of funding and having that being open. And then the final slide I have is just my contact information. I am happy to work with organizations who are looking to get into mentoring to help you connect with best practice, to find resources that you need, to connect you with other organizations that are doing this work in your community. As Rhonda and Dana both said, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There is support out there, and we do have a lot of quality mentoring organizations in the state of Oklahoma that are doing impressive work. And so just would encourage you to seek support from those sort of existing resources. So I just want to wrap this up by saying a huge thank you to you 2 ladies for coming and sharing your stories. I really think there's so much advantage, especially in sort of that mentoring and school foundation partnership and putting those 2 things together, that just wanted to spread the word on that and appreciate your help in doing that.
Thanks for including us.
Thank you, Katie.
All right.
Thank you to those who listened in today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're going to get watched on recording as well on our on demand on our website. And so certainly if you're watching this down the road on demand, don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. We'd love to get you connected.
Yeah, certainly contact me.
Yeah, thanks to everyone for jumping on, and thank you again to you 2 for participating. and hope to get an opportunity to connect with you guys again soon. Thank you so
Thanks.
much.